Hi, I am in Brooklyn, and I survived the zombie apocalypse. Everything that I knew was destroyed. So, here's the big question. What am I going to do, and how will I survive this travesty? How will I tell time without clocks? Well, there is a way to do that with the sun. Depending on where the sun is in the sky and the shadows around you, you can tell what time of the day it is. What direction will I be traveling? Well, we know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. So if we position ourselves right, we know where north and south is depending on the rising and the setting of the sun. Now, where is the best air quality / gases in the atmosphere? Well, there's lots of elevation and trees in the mountains. And there's also some dry places like the desert with lots of flooding, so that's kind of a problem. But there's also rain and plants. And so I think that the best place that probably we could go is elevation with lots of trees. Now, what climate and why? You see, there's quite a few options here, but my two favorite that I was thinking was either a drier, more elevated area like the mountains that we currently live in, like let's say AF Canyon, where there's valleys and vegetation, or there's beside the beach, not necessarily right in the water, but close to it, like I'd say San Diego. So how will the wind patterns affect me? Well, there's a lot that goes into that, right? We have the two places that I'm debating, and in the mountains, it can get real windy, especially during, the cold seasons, and over in the ocean, right? There's lots of ocean breezes, which is really nice, but sometimes that can cause a lot of rain and a lot of storms, and I don't know how I feel about that. Now, the formation of clouds, that's really, really important, right? We got to figure out where we want to go with it and why. We have the cirrus, the stratus, and the cumulus. I always say that one wrong, right? And we have the thin ones and the thin layered ones, the big fluffy ones. Well, the big fluffy ones are the ones you want. They have the rain, and we have the tornadoes, right? So I don't want somewhere that has tornadoes. Tornadoes scare me. Tornadoes are not my thing. In fact, it's nadir season over in Alabama where I used to live, and so I know the dry air and the cold air, and the hot air, they all come together and they have a little dance and they go around, and that's how you get tornadoes. And I don't want to live anywhere with that. Now, if it's too hot or too cold, what does that do, right? What does climate change? What's some of the consequences? Well, that's a dead bunny. And then we have also dead vegetation, right? And if things around us that provide us energy die, then what does that equal? That gives us death. And so we can't have that, right? Another thing we have to think about is groundwater. So where's the water coming from? Where's it going? All that good stuff. Well, the rain will come down and it soaks into the water, and there's a lot of different water levels, but the groundwater flows into the rest of the area. We have the flora versus fauna. Now, flora is things that get their own energy and they don't need to consume other things to get energy, but fauna does, right? We are fauna, animals are fauna, and we are lucky enough to be omnivores so that we can eat and consume both for energy. Now, how is life distributed? Before, in the olden times, it was just, right, birds and wind and all that good stuff, all the natural things. We have the new things, right? We have farms and tractors and all that good stuff. And so we're able to combine those, and we want to make sure that we find a place that has both in case we don't have access to one. What makes up the soil? So you got to think about the 5 things that make up soil. We got climate, we've got parent material, time topography, and organisms. With all of those, you're able to find a good balance of soil that can feed your vegetation and your animals and all that good stuff so that you are able to survive. How is the landscape that you are around formed? Well, you got to take into fact, right, that there's material, drainage, and slope. There's also, tectonic plates and all that good stuff. And what you really want in a good area to live is you want something that's sturdy, plentiful of water, and has a variety of slopes, right? So you're able to grow a lot of things, and you're able to eat a lot of different animals and things like that survive in those areas. So earthquakes, right? We know that that's a problem. They cause tsunamis, they cause, fault lines, it's horrible. So they just kind of move around, which is kind of scary, but it's kind of like, I think about it as like a little party, so I'm not scared. It's like a rave. But if you are in a structure, it's the best place to be is in a doorway, but if you're not, then to be in an open area so that you don't get hit by anything if anything does fall down. Now, we have the climate and weathering. So climate and weathering is really important because somewhere that's dry can get super windy, and somewhere that's humid can get super rainy. And so the rain can make things rot and mold, and that's kind of a problem. But the dryness can dry it out, and it preserves it, but it's not really livable, right? Then we have drainage. So there's lots of different versions of drainage, right? And there's people that live in places where there's low water tables and high water tables, and then there's slopes, right? And so I think the place that I would want to live is somewhere that has a lower water table where I can drill down, get into a well, but it's not going to flood all the time. Caverns. Okay, so caverns are something that I feel like would be kind of cool for an adventure. I'm going to be real. Like if I'm going to be bored out of my mind for forever and live alone or whatever, and if I'm surviving, then I probably need to live in a cavern or buy a cavern. We have flash flooding. Flash flooding is such a problem, right? And so we have to make sure that we are doing our best, right? Because flash flooding is scary. There's me up on top of a little house. And so we want to be in an elevated area. We have glacial levels. So if a glacier is melting, it can cause the water levels, right, to go up. And so living by that seashore might not work super well. But it can also cause, more evaporation and more storms to come into different parts of the world. And the water levels will rise. And that's kind of the next part, right? Shore and water lines. What really affects that, right? We have year 1, year 5, year 10 of these water levels going up and up and up. And that can be from, global warming, rainfall. I mean, the moon, obviously, right? That's how the rising tide. But also just the climate just changing over and over, and because we have an influence on the earth. And so what would I choose? I personally would probably choose living in the mountains. I think that it's a very safe place to be, and I think that it has all the things that I'm familiar with, and it has the fish that I like, and it has, the vegetation and the peacefulness, and I think that it really would be the place that I would want to live. So that is all. That is my presentation, and if I survived the zombie apocalypse, which I don't think I would if it did happen, I would live in the mountains.